Hi, I'm Dr. Emily Lean. I am the Associate Dean of Division One State School in the United States. And my husband and I also own a multi-million dollar company that we handle and manage and own uh, real estate investment properties, that kind of thing. And I'm telling you that not to brag, but to tell you that I've got a little bit of street cred. So when I tell you my stories and I kind of give you some examples, I want you to know that they're coming from genuine, true things that I've experienced and not just read in books. So you want to be a leader, or maybe you are already a leader. So one thing they don't tell you about this when you're starting your journey of leadership is that when you're a leader, you have to lead everybody. You don't get to pick and choose who you lead. You don't get to pick and choose who you're working with. Maybe you get to hire a few people if you're lucky enough when you get in there, but most of the time you're just going to inherit things. You're going to inherit people. You're going to inherit problems. You're going to inherit personality disagreements and people that clash and people you wouldn't get along with normally. And you got to lead them all because your job is to make sure that everyone pulls in the same direction at the same time for whatever goal has been established. And maybe you're the one that set that goal, or maybe that goal has been set for you. But ultimately, your job is to lead all those people in the same direction and get them going the same way. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's not okay for the people that you don't like to not to know you don't like them. That's not okay. Okay. You do need to make sure that you stay positive and you stay focused and that you treat everyone equally as much as possible. You're going to have favorites. You know, you have a favorite aunt or a favorite uncle or a cousin you really don't like, but you can still get together at family functions and be civil. Same thing in the workplace, right? When you see people and you hang out with them and you're around them, the more you get to know them, the easier it is to spend time with them and work with them. So ultimately, that leads to the question of, well, how do you lead people you don't like? How do you lead people whose personality is different than yours or who you don't mesh with, or, you know, for whatever reason, it's just not working? Maybe they came in with a bad attitude. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that you just take the time to get to know them and speak to them and find out what makes them tick and why they think the way they do. So, for my own personal example, a few months ago, I had a gentleman I was working with for a couple of years, and he had a reputation for not working. He would kind of just not show up to things and not get his job done. And the difference that I have in academia that you most likely don't have the same problem is that we have this thing called tenure. And when someone has tenure, they have a job pretty much forever. So how do I discipline somebody when they have tenure? What happens when I can't fire them or let them go? I really can't punish them in any way, right? So I have to fall back on my leadership skills and tactics. So I invited this man out to coffee. And when you do this, when you use this trick, the coffee trick, and it's not really a trick, it's just spending time with people. When you do this, make sure that you pick a third party location. It's neutral. Don't pick somewhere that's on site. It doesn't need to be anyone else's business that you're going, just you and the person you're going with. And I generally set aside in my calendar 2 or 3 hours for this because it needs to be a discussion that flows naturally. I can't guide the discussion. I need to let it happen kind of naturally. So back to my story. The gentleman I was having coffee with, he admitted to me later that he felt like he'd been called into the principal's office. But most people know if they get called to coffee with me, there's a reason. So we had coffee, third party, neutral site, off, away. He was late. He went to the wrong place. And all I could think was, oh, here we are, par for the course, right? We can't even get this straight. Can't do this simple task of showing up on time for coffee. And I had texted him and emailed him and confirmed like an hour ahead of time. And yet here he was, still late, still not showing up, coming in rushed with excuses as to why he wasn't there on time. So we get to talking and we get to chatting, and I didn't guide the conversation. I just let it flow naturally. And over the course of an hour and a half to 2 hours, it was a long time, he told me about his family and his children and his education and where he was from and kind of some stories about the organization and where he used to be and how it was. And then it started kind of just naturally progressing into the area that I needed it to go because we were adults. You know, he joked about being called into the principal's office because he knew deep down inside, he knew why he was there. He knew why I was wanting to spend time with him and talk to him to find out what was going on, because he knew something wasn't right and he knew it was not okay. So after we settled in and he kind of felt comfortable talking to me, he starts telling me these stories. He tells me how for years he worked there and he did all these things and he went above and beyond. And I knew this already because I couldn't figure out why he used to be such a good worker and then he turned into this. That's what I wanted to know. So he told me about how he'd worked so hard and how it didn't matter how much he did or how much extra he put in. Nobody noticed and nobody cared and nobody said anything. There had been poor organizational leadership. So I understood. We've all been there. We've all worked hard only to be told work harder, or only to not be acknowledged or seen or heard, right? And then you get kind of discouraged and you just, it's called quit and stay. He just quit and stayed. He didn't leave. He just stopped doing extra. He did only the bare minimum, and sometimes not even that. So at the end of the conversation, again, after 3 hours of talking, he asked me, "What can I do for you?" And I said, I really appreciate that. Here's some things that I need you to do. And I put him in charge of some stuff. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One reason being that by being in charge of something, in charge of a committee, in charge of a large group of people, he can't hide. He can't hide behind, I didn't show up, I didn't know, I didn't, all these excuses that he'd been giving. He can't give it anymore because now he's in charge of all these people. If he is the one sending out the invites, he's the one setting up the meetings, he's the one setting the agendas. If he doesn't show up or he drops the ball, everyone sees. So now we've got an ego thing involved as well, right? And then he also told me that he appreciated the fact that I had sat down and talked to him and listened to him, and that he felt like I understood. So rather than me telling him what I needed him to do, here he was volunteering. The same thing that I needed him to do 3 months ago, he's reacting very differently now. He's volunteering and he's offering to do it himself. And he's doing a great job of it so far. And he's gung-ho. And he is, I think, becoming the person he used, the worker he used to be, right? And it's because he felt like he was seen and heard and appreciated. His personality is not one that I would normally seek out or naturally be attracted to. He doesn't know that. He doesn't need to know that. All he needs to know is I took the time to sit down and talk to him. So related to the idea of personality, I'm sure at this point in your career and your training, you've heard of the big 5 personality traits, right? And everyone knows that conscientiousness is the one we want everybody to have, and it's so important. And you want people to be agreeable and open to new experiences. And hey, extroverts are okay and introverts are okay too. But then there's that one that everyone's kind of afraid of, that trait, neuroticism, right? Here's the deal though. When you're a leader, you're going to have all different kinds of people. And maybe you're someone who's high in trait neuroticism. That's okay. Right? Part of the deal is that you find a place for everyone. If I have someone in charge of security, you better bet I want them to be high in trait neuroticism. I want the person who's constantly thinking of ways that something bad could happen. We say the word paranoid, but that's not the right thing. But y'all get what I'm talking about here. We want them to be in charge of that. If I am doing a SWOT analysis, heck yeah, I want the person that's high in trait neuroticism to be in charge of the one looking at the weaknesses and the threats, because they're the ones whose their mind is conditioned and just naturally works, where they identify problems and seek out things that are of concerns. That's a good thing. You need all different kinds of people. If you're naturally an extrovert and you find it hard to work with introverts, maybe that's something you need to work on, right? Maybe that's something about your personality, your leadership. You need to be able to lead all different kinds. And in order to do that, you need to understand the different types of personalities. You need to be able to recognize them. By recognizing them and identifying them and bringing attention to them, it really helps them to thrive and to be successful. I have approximately about 1,000 students who report to me. And at any given time, 40 to 50 faculty that seek me out if there's problems or issues or concerns. I have no way to know all these people very intimately, where I would know their children's names or what's going on in their life, or if they went through a divorce, or if their parents died or dog, or I can't know that information. What I can do is that each time someone comes to me with a problem, I take the time to listen to them, and I take the time to take it seriously and discuss it with them and come up with a solution. Right. And it's not even just that. I had a young man come into my office the other day. Never met him. To be honest, I'll probably never see him again. That's a big school. Right. And he was telling me about this internship he'd gotten, and he was going to work at a gym and a couple other things. And he was so excited. And all I had to do was sign a piece of paper. He could have walked in, given me the paper. I could have signed it. And within 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes, he could have been done and out the door. I asked him to sit down. I asked him to tell me about his internship. I asked him to tell me how he got it. And after I signed that piece of paper, I stood up and I shook his hand. And I feel bad. I can't even remember the kid's name. There's this big 20-something-year-old young man. He was a huge person, right? Working at a gym. That was his internship. And I shook his hand and I said, I want you to know something. It took a lot of initiative to go out there and find that internship on your own, because he did. No one else helped him. And it took a lot of initiative for you to track down the paperwork and to take care of all this and meet with your advisor and to make sure you got course credit for this. And I want you to know I'm proud of you. It took a lot of gumption, and you should be proud of yourself. And I'm proud of you as your associate dean to see you doing this. And I'm proud that you're one of my students. And that big young man just melted in my office. May never see him again. But he had that moment and we connected, and I was able to make him feel important and to make him feel seen and heard. And he'll walk away and he'll tell his friends and he'll tell his parents and he'll tell his cousins, right? And that attracts them to my organization. That's no different than any other company out there. You treat people well, you spend time with them as much as you realistically can, and you lead them in the way you want to be led. So we talked about personalities. The other thing you should talk about, and don't try to hide it and don't try to be embarrassed about it, but you also have to lead different levels of intelligence. And it took me a long time, I'm embarrassed to say, to realize that not everyone operated at the level I operate at. And I'm not, again, not saying that to be cocky or condescending to other people, but for you to be in this course you're in, and for you to be watching this video and being involved in this leadership development course, you're right up there with me. Okay. But we've all been around people or family members or friends or worked with someone or went to school with someone who they just couldn't get it. They just couldn't, bless them. They did not have that skill set, that capacity. You have to make sure that you lead them, and you have to find dignity and honor and respect for them in whatever way you can in your organization, right? You offer skills training, you offer opportunities to transfer and to promote as much as you can, right? But you have to make sure that you lead everyone, everywhere, in any possibility that you can, right? And you always make sure that whatever strategy you have in place, that everyone you talk to is working towards that same strategy. Because I promise you, if you don't, you're going to run into some big problems later on. So I want you to leave here excited about the idea of being a leader. I want you to know that I'm proud of you, because you're taking initiative and you're here trying to improve yourself and be better. And that says a lot about you. So be proud of yourself. And I hope that in 10 or 15 years, maybe you're the face on the screen somewhere for someone else, telling them about the tips and tricks you've learned to be a great leader, and helping other people do good things, pass it on in the world. Be the hope you want to see, all that cheesy, corny stuff, but it goes around and it keeps going around because it's true. If you be good to people, they'll be good to you. Be a good leader and they'll follow you. They will follow you all over. People will work overtime. They will cut corners. They will pinch pennies. They will do anything they can if they know that you care about them and that you're a good leader who wants what's best for them. So thank you and good luck.